Boker Tov.
So first of all, as we begin today, this should be a merit of brothers and sisters in the Holy Land of Israel. They are under attack, and God should protect them, give them strength and protection. Great opportunity is putting on the tefillin, as we're doing now. Give arms to Israel. And our way of giving arms to Israel, so we have the physical arms of Israel, which they need to protect themselves. And for those of us who are not in the front lines, we need to give arms for Israel, putting on tefillin. As it clearly says, that they will see the sign upon you and they will be fearful of you. And the Talmud says this is referring to the tefillin. We continue with the first portion of Bamidbar, the first portion of the book of Numbers. And the Torah describes, after the counting of the Jewish census, the Torah describes the formation of the Jewish people while they were in the desert, as they traveled through the deserts, both as they camped and also as they traveled. The description here in the Torah, chapter 2 of the chapter 2 of the first parsha, page 804, 805, it describes that in the very center of the camp was a sanctuary. In that camp was the tribe of Levi, Machane Leviah, that was called Machane. There was Machane Kahuna, Machane Leviah. And then outside of the Levi camp, all the Jews, the entire Jewish people, were surrounding it by tribes. And the way they were encamped is that on each side were 3 tribes. So totaling 12 tribes, aside from the Levites, which were in the center. You had 3 tribes on each side, making a total of 12, and that was their encampment. Different opinions as to how they actually traveled. According to one of the opinions, is the same way they camped, that's how they traveled. There was this kind of formation. And it looked like, if you were to observe it, if you had a drone then, filming their travels and their encampment, it's like an army camp, where you have a formation, traveling in a specific formation. But what is at the center? At the center is what you are protecting. In the center is the sanctuary. In the center of the sanctuary is the Aron, the ark. Interesting, based on that, is when they would get up from their encampment, as we will learn further on in the book of Numbers, is what we say, Vayihi b'nesor ha'aron vayeru Moshe. And when Aaron traveled, Moshe said, Kuma Hashem, v'yafutzu oivecha, v'yanus misanecha ipanecha, and your enemies will flee from before you. Which, interestingly, 2 things needs to be explained here. Number 1, what does Vayihi b'nesor ha'aron? When the Aaron traveled, it wasn't the Aaron who was traveling; it was the Jewish people who were traveling. And why was there a need to protect the sanctuary if, in fact, it says Kuma Hashem v'yafutzu oivecha? If the Aaron represented God, then, and it says, your enemies will flee from before you. So it's not that the Aaron needs protection; it's the Jewish people need protection. So the truth is, they're both right, both true. We have a responsibility of safeguarding the Torah, safeguarding the sanctuary. It's our honor, it's our privilege to safeguard. But in essence, we're not protecting the Aron, we're not protecting the sanctuary. The sanctuary and the Aron protect us. So perhaps one can say, just like there were guards outside the sanctuary, outside the Beis Hamikdash, is described that there were guards, there were Kohanim on one side, Leviim, there were honor guards. It's not appropriate that you have a palace without guards, not to protect the palace, but to show that the palace is not just left alone. It's an honor. These are honor guards. But at the same time, we have a responsibility to guard, to safeguard the Ark and the Torah. So this concept is a concept which applies on all levels. On the one hand, we have a responsibility to the Torah. Just as we are, this past weekend, it was Mother's Day. And, it's possible that children grow up thinking that the purpose of a mother, purpose of parents is to serve them. Comes along Mother's Day and reminds us. Every day is Mother's Day. But a Mother's Day reminds us that, no. The purpose of your mother is not to serve you. It's she looks at it as her responsibility. She does it from love. It's our responsibility to look after her, and to give her respect, and to give her honor, to give our parents honor. They're doing it altruistically. They're doing it as something which is natural. A natural thing is that a parent takes care of a child. But we should not take that for granted. That's the point. Don't take that love, that kindness, that responsibility for granted as an expectation. We must be grateful and reciprocate. The same is also true about the Torah and the sanctuary and God. We must safeguard the Torah. We should not take God's benevolence and the gifts that we receive from God for granted. We have a responsibility of safeguarding it. In turn, this safeguards us, by the way. So yes, we are doing it in order to, out of honor and respect, but it reflects on us and it's reciprocated to us. So one way of doing it is the mitzvahs that we have a mitzvah of safeguarding it. That's why there are many layers to the mitzvahs that we do, which are even beyond the biblical requirements. So for example, the Torah says don't mix meat and milk. So it's Jewish practice that we also don't mix chicken or fowl and milk. The Torah doesn't say chicken or fowl. The Torah says which is don't cook a kid in its mother's milk, which is a reference to meat. Chickens don't give off milk. Yet, because there's a mitzvah in the Torah to safeguard the Torah. It's been a Jewish practice, and instituted by the sages, and an accepted Jewish practice that we don't mix chicken and milk either, or fowl and milk, because since the person refers to chicken also as meat, something which in our minds we refer to it the same way, we therefore don't. That is part of safeguarding the Torah. Safeguard, if you have a beautiful lawn, fence around it. You safeguard it. And the same is also about the Torah. So we take special care to go, we take extra steps in mitzvahs to ensure that the mitzvahs themselves are protected. Number one. Number two, as the Jewish people traveled through the deserts, the Torah was in the center. So sometimes we may think that, of course, I want to institute and create a holy environment in my home. And therefore, that's at the center of my home. But when I travel, and when I'm outside, one may be a little bit lax. And here the message of the Torah is, the purpose of the Torah is to bring it to the world. Of course, our homes is the center of our very being. But now, even as we travel, that comes along with us. The Torah and its values come along with us even as we travel. And we must safeguard the Torah there as well. Thirdly, and finally, there's more levels as well, but for today, there's an inner sanctuary that we have within ourselves. Our neshama, our souls. And we must safeguard the neshama within ourselves as well. We safeguard the neshama by doing mitzvahs, by studying Torah and doing mitzvahs, adding in acts of meaning and purpose. This is how we safeguard the inner sanctuary, the inner soul. And we safeguard the soul from the four sides, because the soul, the neshama, can be vulnerable from four different areas. This is how the Rebbe's insight. One vulnerability, one area of danger we must safeguard is from spiritual indifference, from the coldness, spiritual indifference. And therefore we must safeguard it from that side. On the other hand, we must also safeguard it from inappropriate passions. And therefore that must be safeguarded. Just because we have a drive and a strong passion towards something doesn't mean it's appropriate. You have to safeguard, make sure it's right. We have to safeguard from arrogance, from self-gratification over the brilliant accomplishments that we have, not let it get to our head. That also needs safeguarding. And safeguarding it from despair, from the darkness of despair. That also must be safeguarded. We can't allow ourselves to think that we're nothing and what we do is nothing. And this goes further down into despair. That one must be safeguarded. That we have to have optimism. We have to have self-esteem. You have to have a healthy sense of humility and responsibility. Our passions must be used appropriately. And we must never be indifferent. Indifference has to be towards the negativity. But towards what's right, we must be passionate about it. That's how we create an entourage around our precious neshamas, our precious souls, which is the center, the very center of our being. And with that, may God Almighty grant true safety, our brothers and sisters in the Holy Land of Israel, from any barrages, anything that comes from without and from within. And we are here with them physically, spiritually, financially, and at the very least, arms for Israel, light Shabbat candles,